Like, do this, turn this on. Okay. Yay. Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. Okay. So, should I try? Yeah.
We're ready finally. Sorry.
Yeah, it takes a little bit to get it going. So, welcome guys to Worldwide Technology. You guys have not been here. Afterwards, if you want, I can show you our beachfront, just of the data center that we have. That's basically does nothing other than POCs. I mean, it does a lot. Gets us a lot of business, but it doesn't run any of our infrastructure. It's literally for POCs, for customers to try things, labs, all that kind of stuff. I do not work there. I work in internal IT. So my name's Ken Maglio. I'm a lead applications administrator on the Windows side of the world, hence why this is about PowerShell and why I'm up here. So I love to automate things. My license plate literally says I automate, because someone else took DevOps here. But that's okay. I do love PowerShell. I do a lot of things with PowerShell that probably I could do with other things. I was a developer from like original times, back when like ASP and VB6, well, VB3 was around. So I am also now into Puppet now for about the last year and a half, 2 years, whatever. We've had it for 2 years. I've only really started doing it for the last year and a half. Love video games. IT size large. This is why, because I sit at home as well in front of my computer. I do love drones, and when I have room in my house and nothing else is going on, model trains. And I have big parrots. I brought one in once. People are like bird. Yeah,
you said
like
parrots plural. How many?
So I have a large Moluccan cockatoo, a Amazon, a severe macaw, which is a small version of macaw, and then a little Quaker.
What do you call it? Parrots. Like the murder of crows.
I have no idea.
I'll probably end up Googling that today.
You probably will. I don't think it's a flock. So who knows? All right, so now we're in this guy. So of course, this isn't actually PowerPoint. I was a really big geek and I wrote this all in PowerShell to actually present to you in PowerShell. So
nerd.
Exactly. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So today, gosh darn, this thing's like a heat lamp. Anyway, the objectives I was going to go over today are basically common pitfalls when you start looking at remoting with PowerShell. We've probably all run into them if you've done PowerShell remoting and you've hated them as much as I have. The biggest thing is, for me, I prefer CredSSP as an authentication method because it gets rid of double hop issues when you go from one box to another So Kerberos, negotiate, don't use digest. Basic auth get consumed the minute you use them, the minute you hop once. So CredSSP gets around that. It's kind of like the double hop scenario in development that developers deal with. And then some GPO stuff, common things that you will have to turn on in order to utilize CredSSP and also get PowerShell to work without being a big pain in the butt. We'll also look at execution policy, because if you do like I've done recently and you centralize your scripts onto a server or a UNC path, you might run into execution policy issues. There's ways around it. We'll take a look at that. And the first 3 commands, people, if you've done PowerShell remoting, you're probably used to seeing these 3. Okay, I really don't like this light. I'm sorry. I'm going to try doing that. Okay, that's so much better. That thing is literally heat. So these first 3 are going to be new PS session, enter PS session, and then invoke command. Hopefully, if you've done anything with PowerShell remoting, you're familiar with those. If you're not, that's okay. We're going to go over with them. The last one probably, does anybody, let's just a quick show of hands and I'll relay to the video here. How many people have done PowerShell remoting? Okay. How many of you have done import PS session? Cool. Okay. So import PS session is something that's very rarely used. But it's pretty darn powerful once you understand what it's actually doing. So we'll take a look at that. And then I've written for a system we use internally called Snap. I've written a remote management module. It's really a function in a module, at least for now. And we're gonna go over that. I've stripped it out of all of our proprietary stuff and just made it demoable for us. I don't think there's any concerns around this piece of it, so I can probably as well give it to you guys if you want to take a look. So, yeah. So, common pitfalls. So the first thing that I want to kind of go through, I have some of these, and we'll take a look at a demo here once I get through some of the talking points. And if there's any questions you guys have, just stop me. No problems at all. So the easiest way to enable remoting is obviously to be on the same domain. Well, and I'll say easiest way is at least the same domain, or if you're in a single forest, have trusts for the domains. That's going to be your easiest way. If you've got a bunch of workstations or work group type servers, that's harder because there's no trust involved. And it can throw things for a loop. Group policy for one, you can't really do much with that, so you're gonna have to configure each machine locally, which is a pain. Be done. So that's one thing, is domain joined. Ours is gonna be a lot easier, obviously. To have an account that you can log on to, so we have one automation account that runs these tasks for us. That way we know it's that one account. It's geared to doing just those tasks. Nobody logs in as that user. It's not something used other than for this specific task. So if for some reason something goes crazy on it, either some script somebody wrote is bad or it's been compromised, but it's only those specific workflows that we use for automation. And the last thing is you can run this. However, if you do some configuration through GPO, it's pretty much the same. But to enable, you can run a command to easily do a greenfield type of server, enable PS remoting, and that will enable most of the things you need on a server. So some things people won't tell you. CredSSP. So a little more in depth here is you can do Kerberos or NTLM type permissioning to where whatever current user you're logged in as passes those credentials and you can log into the other machine. And for administrators of your like domain admins, while that's good for doing automation tasks, that might be coming in from another account. You might have something on the box as an agent responding to these types of things like we do. You may have something being pushed onto that box. You may be coming from another server. So typically in our environment, using Kerberos or negotiate doesn't necessarily set us up for success. So we've gone with CredSSP. What that basically does is it allows you to configure trusted hosts. So when you use CredSSP, because you're able to hop from one box to another, you've got to define the hosts that you trust across all of your hosts. So this is where group policy comes into play. We'll take a look at what this looks like in a screen. I have a VM that we can take a look at some of these policies and group policy here in a second. But I wanted to say that this allows you to be able to hop from one to the next without having to worry about, well, now I've consumed that, I can't go anywhere. I get one hop and I'm done if I use Kerberos or negotiate. So CredSSP is our flavor of choice. Ports, as you can see, legacy is why I have those 80 and 443 turned on. Those are like, if you're using old systems, it can go over those ports. You actually have to turn on some registry settings to enable WinRM, PowerShell Remoting over 80 and 443. Otherwise, it's 5985 for non-encrypt, non-SSL, non-certificate based, and 5986 for certificate based off. So those are those ports. The path here is, we'll take a look at here real quick live. So what I have is just a basic 2012 R2 server. Hopefully this is big enough that you guys can all see. And what we'll do is run gpedit.msc. Is that too teeny to see? Probably. Probably. Can I?
I've never. You can imagine.
Yeah. So where this is basically under administrative templates. The first place you have to go to is Windows Components. And then the aptly named Windows Remote Management folder. And then you've got two folders underneath there, Client and Service. Boy, I wish I could. Oh, wait, I know. Give me 2 seconds. I'm not going to open up that Google Hangout window and cause you all to have like vertigo and. Come on. Oh my gosh, why is that up there? Go. Show folder. Get it out of the darn zip. Place it on my D drive. That'll be super great. Yes. Sure. Okay. So, F4. Oh, come on. I'll have to be off the. There we go. Okay. So, basically here you've got two different folders, and the ones that we would want to look at are going to be first under WinRM service. And I've already edited the ones that we need to do, which is allow CreditSP. Obviously, you can see some of the other ones that are in here, what you might have to do. Obviously, if you were to use like basic auth, not recommended because most people don't enable secure WinRM in the first place because you have to have certificates and all that fun stuff. Yeah, most people don't do that. So don't enable this unless you, okay. Yeah, just don't. So allow CreditSP. Here's the setting, it's enabled. That's all you have to set. There's nothing really great there. However, there's also this one, allow remote server management through WinRM. Don't do this. So in this demo, I've used star, which means allow everything. Put in your domain names, yes, you can use a wildcard. Don't put in star because it's anything. I could just spin up a brand new box in WinRM and have fun. Not great. So again, demo purposes, I've used star just for the ease of I'm on a single box. So that's one place, is those two. The other is the client. So again, if I want to receive, so I've got to turn on CreditSP to receive connections. And then the big thing here is trusted hosts. This is the one that gets a lot of people. Again, don't use star, bad. But you can see that you can use wildcards. So if you have a domain, this is perfectly acceptable. For our instance, Yada would work. All host names. So that's basically how you can get that trusted host to work. If you trust your network, then sure, use a star. I don't. Group policy gives you a little bit more, I think, flexibility in that, in where you can specify more than one, or it's a little easier to view than local policy. But this is basically a quick, easy way. If you're having problems, you can do it. They give you some domains here at the bottom, IP address ranges as well. If you trust, if everything's at whatever, 10.2, boom, you can just trust your whole network in that regard as well. So 10.2.star. Okay, so those are the two big ones, the two areas. The one other one that most people now, once you enable these two, that's pretty much all you need to get it to work, except CreditSP has one more place, which is a little bit of a pain. And that place is under System. And I'm going to minimize this if my mouse will behave, and credential delegation. These two boxes. need to be enabled. Delegating fresh credentials and delegating fresh credentials with NTLM only servers. So basically this allows an impersonation coming across and allows you to delegate the credentials you're going to use to make the connection to your servers, even if they are NTLM only, domain join, you know, basically your typical type of stuff. And if you don't have these on, believe it or not, for once, the error message actually tells you exactly what to go modify. So it's actually quite nice once you get to this point. Otherwise, it just tells you, nope, can't connect, sorry, go do something better. So the first areas I showed you, those are the biggest pains. These two, it'll actually tell you that you don't have this setting set, go enable it. These, again, are enabled, but servers to show, don't do that. Put in your domains. So again, those are the types of settings that are common that you need to get set up and running. Now, in this case, I'm on this local box. I'm still going to do a remote session to this local box. So all this still has to work like I was connecting to another server, even though I'm local. I'm not skipping anything just because I'm still local on this machine. If I create a session back, all these group policies for the server, for the client have to work because it literally communicates to that other session over remote communications, even if you're on a local machine. So that's what group policy looks like in a nutshell. Oh, Lord. I have to click out of the VM because it's holding my mouse. So there we go. So that's pretty much part one of here of the group policy objects on this page. And then this is where the other two that I talked about, the fresh credentials, and that's the path for those as well. So it's all in this PowerShell point presentation. So we'll make that available. So we hit the common work, the common pitfalls. Next thing, let's look at this execution policy thing that. All right, okay. So the first part of this is if you go download a PowerShell script off the internet, whether you're aware of this or not, that file, like a PS1 file, will have a zone identifier built into the file from the point at which you downloaded the file. Most people have no idea that this happens behind the scenes in Windows, but it happens on every file. So when you go to run a file, a PS1 file, it looks at it and goes, hey, what was the zone identifier? Where was this zone? And we're talking about zones like IE, trusted, internet. You know, we can take a look at those. You can see right there the different zones. It stores that in the file. You can, yes?
It's stored in an alternate stream, is that what they're doing?
It's stored in the file in that, so when you look at it, basically that zone identifier, if you open up Notepad in that command here, you'll actually see a separate, it's kind of like a little config. It's like zone identifier 3. So you actually see that on the file. You can change it and save it. It's part of the file. I don't know exactly where that is in the file, but it is part of a PS1 file. Header, manifest, something. So the other way around this, other than opening it up and changing this, is to create a new file on your local system and copy the contents and paste it into the new window. Like, okay, don't have to deal with this, copy paste. Literally, that's how you circumvent execution policy. Okay. If any of you have dealt with Chocolatey at all, which if you haven't, then you know you should see last week's presentation, at least the blurb of it. Maybe we'll do another one of what the heck it is if you don't know, but that's how they get around execution policy, because they basically download the string of a PowerShell script and then execute it using invoke expression. There's no execution policy if you just execute a string. So many ways around it. Here's my way. You'll, sorry, geek. Okay, so that function, yeah, it's nasty, it's ugly, but so there were a couple of concerns that I had when we were building this system that we use to execute PowerShell. We drop onto one server, that server is the host, we hop to another server, it executes the commands. Through group policy, we've already set execution policy to remote signed, because that's a NIST compliancy. Hey, we have to comply with federal data, yada, 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 yada. So I don't want to set on the entire box. If I run set execution policy, that sets it for the whole box, not just my session. Mental note, by the way. Did not know that? Yeah, it does. Which sucks. And then group policy would set it back, but I didn't want to leave it open. So what I found scouring the internet was somebody who wrote this as a one-liner. I couldn't understand one freaking lick of it. So I broke it out into multi-lines. Still really don't fully understand, but I understand enough. What this is basically doing is connecting to the current instance of PowerShell running. And there's a piece of PowerShell called the Authorization Manager, which you can see is aptly named the Authorization Manager. That handles execution policy. That handles the security of that for that session. What this script is doing is ripping out the one that's been auto-provisioned through GPO, through other securities, through your profile when you initiated a remote session, and slipping in a brand new one that has no configuration, which is the equivalent of doing unrestricted, or basically bypassing group execution policy. But only doing it for that session. As soon as you disconnect or network gets dropped, that session's deleted. It's spun down by PowerShell and Windows, and this goes away. So only for that particular PowerShell session on that box is execution policy subverted.
Does it persist through other run spaces, or is it just the exact run space you started? The way you start PowerShell job, whatever, does it have next?
The session and yes, the session and the run space is attached. So it will now not have an authorization manager that's configured. So any run spaces clone off of the existing authentication manager off the existing main session run space. So if you spin up another run space, it should be open. As far as I understand, in my current operations that I'm using, I don't have any that spin up jobs, background jobs as of yet. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this will not work. So
how would you execute this on a remote session where that bot is restricted?
So in our cases, what we do is we'll connect to a remote session. We'll use invoke command to actually build a script block that includes this and the calling of it. Send that across as part of the first thing we do on that box before we load any other modules. So this doesn't need elevated rights outside of the session. This will work inside of that session in order to, as long as the user you're connecting to has rights on the box. I mean, you're going to do automation on the box. I would hope you're connecting as a account that has some rights on that box to do what you need. That should be probably like a local administrator type user. These types of things we've had no issues with running from inside the context of the remote session.
The remote session isn't actually running the script at that point. It's
No.
just running your account.
It's running, so it takes that script, sends it over, and issues that script to run in that remote session on the remote server. So when it does that, it runs this function as is on that remote server in that remote session and basically rips out the auth manager and puts this in, so it bypasses execution policies.
It seems the same way as if you enter PS session, you're running the same stuff. That's how it's passed.
Yeah.
Right. Versus when you run into the problem is when you say I want to execute that.
Right. You're running the script one.
Yes. And so in our case, why I needed this is because my host server that I was initiating the PowerShell session from held all of my PowerShell scripts. I didn't want to put all my PowerShell scripts and distribute them on all of the systems that I need. So what I'm doing, and we'll get into this, but basically from that host server, I'm having whatever system I connect to go back to that host server through UNC path and load the modules. So we have Puppet in our environment for config management, and I was in the version 1 of this, I was distributing them across the servers, like our Exchange servers, our AD servers, FTP, things that we were automating, going, this is a pain. There's got to be a better way to do this and keep my scripts in one place, right? So this was one of the issues that we ran into, was execution policy. Once you start trying to load from a UNC path, another server, if you centralize where your scripts are located instead of distributing them. We primarily write everything in functions and modules for automation. We don't write a script or just code. We write it as a module, load the module, execute the function. So that's our standards that we do.
Or are you signing the server or
Not yet. We want to.
so if you have a book signed,
If you had it signed, you should not need this, correct. So remote signing is something that a lot of places, well, not a lot of places, but remote sign has its challenges if you're constantly writing scripts, because every time you have a change to your module, you've got to remote sign, right? Because the hash changes of the script. Now, you could build a Jenkins, you could build something that does that continuous kind of integration. We're not there yet. We're not that on our PowerShell scripts. I'm still getting certain admins to get used to writing PowerShell from VB6. So getting them to write functions is a challenge at times over just a straight script. So trying to add remote signing to it, it's like, woohoo, no. Let alone unit testing. So that's where we've gotten to. So now the meat and potatoes of this, and I know I've already talked a bit, but the commands that we want to take a look at, the 4 big ones, right? So new, enter, invoke, and import. So new PS session, these are common. There's a lot more parameters. I just listed the common ones that you're probably going to need to look at. The name, you can give your PS session a name so it's easily identifiable, because these show up in git-ps session. One command I didn't list here, but that'll list all the sessions that are open on this host. If you put a name to them, it may make sense, and we don't, because we're spinning these up kind of in ephemeral type of situations where we're just spinning these up. We don't care. So name is one you can use. Computer name, kind of required. Maybe, just by chance. Credential, obviously this needs to be a PS credential. So, and this may be just a good question to the rest of you. If you do scripts that require credentials, what do you do? And this is a question to you guys.
SSL encryption or certificate encryption.
RSA encryption of the password? Or certificate-based?
Certificate-based encryption.
Okay, so basically load up the private cert. Where do you keep the certs?
So,
I had the same problem, because I'm like, I need it on this way. I'm putting the private cert on the same computer where I'm doing the remote session from, where my script is.
so for, we have one case where we have a lab environment set up, and I don't care what the lab.
Sure.
We use the lab for custom tests, validation. But for that, I actually have a import PFX function that I wrote or something. So I keep the PFX file and I have that, so I can load it up, import the CLI XML, I'm using the data module. Go ahead and handle all that for me, because I didn't want to deal around with CMS message. I just wanted back compatibility with PowerShell.
Okay.
So once I import my lab thing for my testing, then I remove the certificate and call it in. For our automation stuff, we trust the user account to protect that. So we install that certificate in that user's certificate store in person.
Okay.
So that way, when that user logs on, they can run the unprotected command, and it will automatically look up based off the thumbprint.
Gotcha.
I used to have it as under the computer system certificate store, but then anyone who logs on can decrypt the XML.
Right. Then you're storing the secret with the key. Right. So I've gone around. We're already in the throes of looking at a PAM, a privileged account management system. So CyberArk, maybe, I don't know, we're looking at it, but regardless, huh? Huh. So we're looking at different things right now. Well, I say our security team is, they're doing a lot of this in IBM and all this other stuff. So, so we're looking at that. However, in the meantime, because I have no idea the functionality nor when that's going to be in place, we went with just, since we're executing our automation through Jenkins as a middleman, Jenkins is going to hold our secrets. So we're going to use AES encryption. I wrote a little module that uses AES, but yeah. Fully understanding encryption is a whole nother language. Like I have a passphrase, and then I have a salt. Okay, cool. Then I have an intersect vector hash. Okay, what? So anyways, I have 3 secrets I have to have in order to encrypt and decrypt a password, but hey, it does work, and I actually get an encrypted password I can save in my files. Hmm? Jenkins security isn't great. 2.0 might get better, I don't know. But either way, I'm protected. I have ways around it because the way I'm going to show you here is plain text. Okay, it's fun, but what else? Just for demo. So basically, the other thing that most people don't look at is new PS session option. We have had no use for it yet. However, if we were to move to certificate-based authentication or other things, or potentially, I've seen a machine profile, right, where maybe certain environments you use machine profiles, but you don't want that to load. There are some options here that you can do to help get you around certain hurdles. Maximum received data size, object size, certain things like that. There's also it's a group policy entry or a local policy, what I say. There's a limit of the amount of memory a PowerShell window can use. Just as a special note, I didn't put it in here because I literally thought of it today because I happened to see it in the group policy. Oh, that would be good to put in here, and I forgot to. There's a limit on how much memory one PowerShell session can use, and I think it's remote PowerShell sessions can use. We had to bump that up to like 2 gig for some of our things because, yeah, we were building huge JSON objects, which was fun. Trying to upload every distribution list and every member of every distribution list back up to Exchange, or back up from Exchange to ServiceNow. Yeah. So here's a look at Enter PS Session if you've never done. Enter PS Session takes a session that you want to enter. Think of this as kind of a console-based RDP. You're basically, when you enter a PS session, you're now sitting at the console of that other machine. Now, you can't bring up like Server Manager or anything like that, but you can execute and run just straight PowerShell commands or command commands. Anything you can do pretty much at a terminal, you can do in this session. So that's what Enter PS Session. You type exit to exit and come back out. The next thing is invoke command. So this is you're back on your host and you want to send a script block across. Handy thing if you don't ever remember, actually convert your strings to a script block. I tend to always use here strings, which is what this weird @ symbol and double quotes is. If you ever run into, I hate escaping double quotes inside of my strings to use those. Here strings are a great way to get around all of that. And basically, that's an example of sending a command across the line, and I will get back on my local terminal. Hello, Ken Maglio, if I were to run this. So it executes, but I still get the output on my terminal from the remote terminal. Any questions? Anybody? Cool. Oops. Now the fun. Import PS session. You can really screw up your current host session like this. Especially with that third option there, if you're not careful. If you don't use prefix, which is optional, and you don't use anything else, and you say, import session, allow clobber. You've lost all ability at that point to do pretty much anything in your own PowerShell window. Everything is now re-aliased to the other server. So what import session does, it basically takes the commands that are sitting on the other server and it brings them local to your server. So think of Exchange server, the Exchange commands, or AD and the get AD user. If you were to bring those from a session you've opened on a server that has those commandlets, maybe you don't want the AD server commandlets on every system. I wouldn't blame you. Probably not a good thing anyway. But let's say you hop over, load the Active Directory module, and then you import the Active Directory module, which you can specify module, you can specify commands. You bring that over, you'll have all of those local. So now in a script, if you didn't want to deal with the remote session or remote access and have to deal with issuing invoke commands over and maybe losing input or controlling that, you wanted it all in one script so that you can deal with the output locally in a script or in a function or module that's on your host machine. That's where import session can come into handy and come into play, right? So you're able to bring those in. You can also prefix them, as this shows here, the verb dash prefix noun. So this allows you to prefix all of those. So you could, not that this would be great, but you could prefix all of the AD commands with AD. So you'd have get AD user. Yeah, but, you know, or, you know, remote or something like that, whatever you might want to call it, or just R, whatever you want to prefix it with, it will. And it'll put it in that location. So the verb will still be there, verb dash your prefix, and then the rest of whatever's there. So that's the way import session works. So the example is there. I did do the, just to see what it was like, session allow clobber, and I'm like, how do I exit? How do I kill my remote session now? No. No, it doesn't work. No, you're in the remote session. I tried, I kept typing, and it's like, no. You know what, actually, huh?
Removing the PS session, would you do?
How? You don't have context to it anymore. You've just overlaid all of the remote sessions. I'm like,
Can you fully qualify?
fully qualified what?
Well, I guess,
The command was overwritten.
right.
So I haven't found a good way to come out of that if you do clobber. Yet. That was the only way. Kill PowerShell. I'm done. Kill the window. Like literally I was like, okay, I'm effed. Done. Red X. That was pretty much it. Once I did allow clobber. Huh? Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna remote back. Oh my God, I'm gonna hurt you. What is it, PowerShell Inception? Gee, oh. Hmm? Yeah, clobber. Yeah. Now here's the interesting thing. So if you do this and you don't clobber, or if you do clobber and add a prefix, that's okay because then every command's prefixed, right? That's all right. If you end the remote session, all those aliases that you imported are automatically removed as well once the session goes away. So you don't have to clean up all these aliased commands. So I haven't run into an absolute need where I need this yet, but I can see the potential. So it's one of those things that I'm like, ooh, this would be fun to use. When? I just haven't yet. So anybody else has used it? Have you run into any really good use cases?
At a prior life, or it had admin. Did have admin for power tool on both sides, but that only had a limited number of connections.
Bring it here.
Yeah. I
Gotcha.
also didn't have to worry as much about, since I specified the module, I didn't have to worry about clobbering. But I didn't have anything about.
From Cisco, right? The Cisco PowerShells, yeah. But if you did, yeah. Although some of the interesting things, if you do allow clobber, yeah, even like the basic, and you don't specify anything, even all of the basic commands are clobbered. You're like, wow. I think
I would think that you could do the fully qualified because it's an alias, right? So if you qualify it with the module name,
it's a
backslash,
weird.
I'll try it.
Yeah, I might try, see if I can get out of it.
Make an alias for section.
Well, there were two variables, like built-in variables, that it wouldn't allow clobbering of, like, I want to say it was like percent and maybe $sign.
Yeah, that's probably.
But I'm like, eh. So I tried a bunch of things. I was like, I also, once I saw what that did, I also said, I'm never touching that again. No, I don't need to. I really don't ever want to overwrite a command that's local with a command that's remote. I'll just prefix, because why? So I add a little extra word in there and I can variabilize it. Okay, so demo stuff. Okay, so that was a lot of talking. I know, I'm sorry. Demos. So what I want to demo to you guys is something I've written. And this is based upon, I'm going to actually go here and remove this so we don't have, oh no, that's my VirtualBox server. That's fine. So, hold on, click here for, hey, there we go. So this remote manager, what I've done is create this PowerShell module. And of course you can't tell because horribly, none of this stuff is on, so you can't tell that it's a PSM1. There we go. So this is just a big function. And let's actually edit that. Oh, Lord. So now that I'm in this, I can actually get out of this and actually just make this bigger. Hi. All right. And get rid of, there we go. Can you see? A little bigger, a little bigger. Okay. Yeah, that works. So what this does is, for our purposes, I had a set number of servers I was connecting to. I didn't need to connect to random servers. Now, obviously, I could make an override variable and I could just say computer name and I could pass that in. But what I had in this was, I always want to connect to different servers, either local, I'm going to stay on the host and maybe I'm going up to O365 or up to Azure or AWS or something like that. So I'm going from this box up to somewhere else, not local, or not inside my infrastructure. So then I would use local. I just stay on the current machine. My Active Directory servers and Exchange, I just threw those in here for examples of different machines. So basically what we end up doing, yeah, don't do this. This is plain text. This is just this. So I'm not exposing anything. This is just this local VM I spun up for demo purposes, okay? Obviously, you would have something for your actual purpose here. The next thing is I have this. Now, what I did, because it's still WWT, whatever, I put a company name in. We preface all of our modules, we write with a shorthand version of our company name, something, right? That way we know there's no naming conflicts. Even with commands, we preface it with a 3-letter company code, basically. Recommend that. It's helpful because you never know what the heck vendor is going to give you their PowerShell and what they have something named and you named it. Or a lot of people, you'll get stuff off the web and be like, hey, this is FTP. I'm like, okay, we're going to call it our FTP because there's already built-in, yeah. So what this is going to do is basically say, all right, I want you to load by default the core module. We always just have this core module. And where I'm getting this from is I have a bunch of little modules here, and you can't see those names at all, which is awesome. Basically, there's a PSD one, which is it just lists all of the nested modules that are in this. And then I have AD, core, and exchange, WWT AD, WWT core, WWT exchange. They really have almost nothing in it, which is great. But at this point, what this does is based upon what target you pass to the function, it's going to determine which servers based on if you did something like this, you can have your different servers that you have that are where you're going to run these, right? I'm always going to go run my PowerShell on this AD server. I'm always going to go run it in here. It's one module to keep those in one place. You don't have to worry about, hey, if that chart changes, I have one module that I have to worry about updating. I don't have 15 different places I have server specified in scripts. Exchange, if I have more than one, this is just an array of modules to load, so I'm just adding those additional items into the array. So really nothing grand here. This is where it starts to get a little more fun. So here is my new PS session right here. Obviously, I'm getting the server name from based upon what the different target environments. The credential, obviously. Hey, look, here's that CredSSP that I was talking about earlier that we use. And then configuration name. So has anybody used configuration name? Cool. Things like Microsoft.Exchange. If you want to load up the whole Exchange shell when you remote into it, you can do that. You can define new shells. So old school like SharePoint, you could actually not have to log in as the central admin user to do PowerShell. You actually spin up a new configuration and actually give an account access, stuff like that. So those come in handy. Otherwise, at the top, I just specify Microsoft.PowerShell. That's the default. So then we have this fun thing where we have 2008 R2 servers that can't be upgraded to newer versions of PowerShell because the applications will just break. So I have to handle PowerShell version 2. And I have to write modules that only use PowerShell version 2 scripts, which sucks because I don't like PowerShell 2 that much. So what I can do here is the first thing I go do is I go ask that remote computer before anything else, what's your version of PowerShell? Before I attempt to load any of my modules onto it, I say, what's your version? It gets me that back. And that's this little script block right here. Nothing huge, but it gets me the version. Then when I get that, if I needed to, and in our case, this is a little more involved, but you could load and replace the modules you were about to go load with all of the approved PowerShell 2 modules. That's one way to handle it. So just to give you an example, something like this, if you needed to handle, you can connect, get the PowerShell version before you get there. So the other thing that this module has is a function that's called setShare. Bad me on naming, but whatevs. It should have, WT share or something like that. What this does is it sets up the local host that I'm on, this remote manager, the repo of all of my modules. If I had any just asset files, like sometimes we make templates for emails that we send out in PowerShell, we'll make a template. I can have that asset folder, all of that stuff. Basically, I open up a share to the current user that I'm running as, that whatever I got for my credentials that I'm initiating the remote session as, I'm opening up a share on my host for that user as read-only. So that when I get to that other server, I can turn around and pass the UNC path of that share to that server to load my modules. So this sets that share up on the local machine. There's a function down below that I've written to do that. Hey, script block. Now we're actually going to load the modules. So 1, tell it UNC path, and then 2, get the modules to load. Here's that fun disable execution policy. And I put where I got that from in there because I'll never remember. And then load it. And this right here basically turns off execution policies. And now, even if I haven't signed my scripts, even if they're set to a different zone identifier, or for whatever reason, I put all of this in on mine and I still ran into issues, even though I trusted the domain, I trusted everything. It ran into not only the zone identifier, but when you download a zip file or something and it says it's blocked, that in the property windows, the unblock that you have to do, for some reason it was also detecting that my scripts were blocked. I'm like, they're not, but okay. So this completely got around it. So yay for that. So then I literally since I've passed this into the invoke command, which we'll see, it basically just loads all the modules into that environment through the UNC path. It returns the modules I load so I can validate that I actually got modules loaded that I needed. And then this is the guy that does it. It does the invoke command via the session, script block, the UNC path and modules to load. And that's literally where it leaves it. And then here's that set share. This is just some basics, like setting up an SMB share in PowerShell. Hope not. Oh, it's patched. Well, no, yeah. Yeah, before it's patched. To be honest, I don't think this allows. Everything I saw for it was, I think, 2 out of the, I don't think, because I think 03 is the only one that really whatever. So double check, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that's SMB1 because we have the patch. Well, I'll figure it out soon, actually, because we'll be patching. If it stops working, I'll know why. So, so now I'm going to open up just a new PowerShell window as admin. There we go. Nice and big. That's handy. And of course, it's too big. There we go. So I'm going to go back to that folder. So I'm in here where this remote manager is, and I'm just going to import module. And I'm going to import this remote manager. So now I should have remote get remote session. Target is going to be AD, exchange, local. Local is the only thing, obviously, I have set up for the demo. Environment doesn't really matter since I'm local, but I do need to specify it. And go. So it's a turing server based on local environment. OS is Windows. Proceeding. PowerShell version is 4. Path of loaded modules is the server name, remote manager modules. Warning, I have some function in there because I left that in there when I was showing my wife last night. So I should have, I think, okay. So there's that session, right? And I, like a good guy, forgot to set my variable to be that session instance, but you can see it's open. So now if I do get PS session and I do ID of 1 and do $S, I'll have S as my PowerShell session. I'm just using the ID 1 over here just to get it. So let's take a look at what enter PS session does. And we did that from before. So now notice, even though I've initiated a session to my local system, it still says localhost over here on the side. So I'm now in that session. That's my wife. It happens to be there, so I'll use it, whatever. So there we go, whatever. So, right, yes, thanks, okay. Too bad she wasn't sitting. Right, isn't that great? I'm live broadcasting, hey. So this is only available here on this session of PowerShell. Even though I'm on the same machine, if I exit that session and I try to type Tiffany, tab, nope. That script isn't loaded. So now the fun one, import PS session, $S, and I'll do that one after. Oh God, okay. So, because I didn't do allow clobber, I should now have Tiffany is cool, which I can do. Thank goodness it actually didn't do all of that. So now, yeah, here. And you think I just allow, oh God. Okay. Okay, every command I have on this machine, because it says basically, some of them were, let's see, which ones did it do? Skipped for percent and question mark. Those are the only 2 things that couldn't clobber. I don't have any PS sessions.
Do you get command? Get PS session?
Get
Let's get,
PS.
PS session. So now try doing the qualify, do Microsoft.PowerShell.core.
Here?
Yep. I know, all of it.
Oh.
Together.
Like this.
Yep. Microsoft.PowerShell.core /get-ps session.
Yeah. You.
Fully qualified still works.
Wow. Okay. Look at that.
Qualifications for your advantage. So this also solves the problem we were talking about earlier. So there's actually, so I use a tool called Packard Real Images, and I've been using it to build Packard Real Images. But once you install PowerShell, that stops working because it shells out the PowerShell and then get VM, VPN, whatever. And because you had the proper VPN to that PowerShell, nothing works. It thinks that it should try to create something again, but it's not. So the only way that you get around that is to qualify your PowerShell command devices by modulating
I know. I know. I'm like, no, I even have to do it for that. Oh, remove PS. Does it? Oh, hey, look, it actually does that. $S.
Have you ever tried to?
Okay.
So we'll try this. Fully qualify.
Cancel?
Yep, do get command for get variable.
Oh, Jesus.
Cancel's fine. You're fine. They're gonna do get
Okay.
command and then.
Wait.
variable.
Am I out of that?
It looks like you are, maybe.
No.
No, it's,
No, it's super
There's
basic.
the command. Oh, there's the-
it's super pissed. I can't. WS, man. What have you done to me?
Here, try running it anyway instead of just doing.
Okay.
Do
So-
get dash command and then get dash variable. Close, you were close. You're almost there.
Wait. Okay.
Oh, man. Listen. If it's so broken, I would close out the shell. Actually, do exit. See if exit works. Just keep hitting exit.
Victor, hey, save the command and click on the corner.
Exactly. So, hence why allow clobber bad.
Have you ever tried?
You can't.
Have you ever tried to do debug switch on a script on a remote session? I have, and it'll like say debug, but it won't give you the option to suspend. And I don't know if that's a thing that's the way around.
To suspend it on a remote?
Yeah.
Not that well, so are you doing it through an import or are you doing it as an invoke command?
So I would enter a PS session and then run
a script.
Yeah,
Okay.
run a script, do dash debug, and it would be like debug, but my only option for halt, continue, or.
So I don't know how to make that work, but if you do remote editing, either VS Code or ISC, be
Remote VS? Maybe we should have a session on that. That'd be
You should, but I have to figure out how to do it.
good.
I watched Kirk
Yeah.
Monroe do it.
Ah, nice.
That doesn't mean I can do it.
Yeah. The remote debugging has always been fun with Visual Studio. So those are the basics. So the idea of, now that you've taken away my shell, let me go back to where I was, darn it. Clever. Import module, see where remote.
Probably need to fix it.
Yeah. Hey,
It's when you import it.
this is why I'd never like to use my laptop to do anything. Like conference rooms are the bane of my existence for working sessions. I hate them. I have like one of those natural keyboards too that nobody else can type on. Love it. So $S equals get remote session local and ENV, I don't care. So, in our environment, that's the loading. We have a bunch of different modules that load. Now this does get a little bit interesting. So something to note, the fact that I'm telling it to load all modules.psd1 and use nested modules in that, the module that it thinks those have come from instead of the actual nested modules is this module, which is good and bad, because then I can say, hey, well, just import this entire module and I get all of it that I loaded. It can also be bad if I only want one of them.
If you do them as required modules, think on 4 and 5 will import them. So
As required instead of nested. Right, and I do, right? With this, I know that my client's 4 and I can adjust things as needed. That was one of the other things I had to get working, was detecting 4 versus 2, because again, we have systems like SharePoint that require some of those things, so. Yeah, we're moving there. And as soon as we get our one project done, then that's the next one for one of our groups, is to move Exchange finally to O365. Yeah, we'll see how well that goes. I don't know how blue it'll be.
Well, you can have another session after that.
Yeah, like, so, yeah. Still gonna have a local Exchange server for management, so none of this will really change that much. We probably won't go to O365. That's good. Go ahead. 5,500. We gotta worry about that. Yeah,
Just 2.
we just do. So, well, and we already have an MDM solution and all these, so there's gonna be a lot of, and we're really special, and we have four separate forests. Well, because we have Exchange, and you can't have, if you want separate Exchange servers for dev and test, and then you have to have separate forests, because you can't have more than one Exchange per forest. What else are you gonna run? Lotus?
You don't need email, just use Slack.
Or Teams, Microsoft Teams.
Don't use Teams. It's better. It's
Team-
better.
Don't, okay. No, nobody's around. Don't use Cisco Spark. Okay. No,
What was that setting for the camera?
yeah, right, no, it's not, Teams is far and above a much better and enterprise product. Yeah, it has. We're
Came out with no APIs.
well, yeah. And now there's everything, just about,
You're still missing a lot of the stuff that I'm used to having.
for Slack stuff. My biggest one that I worried about was Jenkins.
And most importantly, there's not a posh bot back.
Well, we need to write one. We need to write one. It'll be fun.
We is you.
We is me now? Okay. Well, I might be, because we need something. So, that is really the gist of this. I hope and plan, to give this, well, not give this, but put it up so that you guys can take a look at this if you guys wanna scrounge some stuff from it. If you want the the encryption module, I can throw that up there too. If you wanna do AES, that's, well, I don't care. It wasn't hard to make. It's out there in a bajillion different ways. So, I like certificate-based stuff better, but
Have you ever looked at free?
no, not yet.
There was a session from, I don't know if that was live, something. There was a session on Kerr's delegation. Actually, no, I know for a fact that's one of the ones that didn't survive. The middle projector of the conference cracked out.
Oh.
Lost all of the sections for it.
Oh,
So,
you would think
that
like,
was, it was EPFD was one of the sessions.
you would have thought, you'd be like, just bring your stuff and we'll, like, that's like, I carry a projector. Yeah, anyway. That's,
Okay. But those are, so you can, have you played?
Oh, yes,
Okay,
yeah, so we had, I won't say where, we had really bad experience years ago, wherein, we're using ECS and search profile to attach match the remove service profile. You guys went get service profile, move service profile, where name equals, why is there nothing in there? We were able to recover, it was great, but we're like, hey, we should probably go ahead and offer this year's way of in sequence. So what I did was I set up 3 session configs with constrained endpoints, also Google just enough administration. Great idea. You basically do use AD groups, users, and associate grant permissions to configurations. And say in that configuration, here's the commands that you can run. And even more so, you can say, we're going to do parameter validation. Make sure that you can't run it with this parameter. So we had a read-only Cisco session, which only exposed the Git command. Then we had a, but we let that run against the tester prod Git command. Then we had a admin for test read-only prod or second session. So hey, you graduated, go and start breaking stuff on the test. And then we had a God level where you can read and write on prod and on test. That allowed for kind of a tiered approach. All the reporting suddenly went down to like the lowest one. Reporting don't need access to any damage. And it was actually pretty decent selection.
The special for especially just pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We were talking about a little bit after, the way that we think about it is start from 2 sessions, 1 read only, 2 class.
Yep.
You need to have it anyway, but yeah, I think by default.
Yep. I think so.
Does anybody turn on transfer payment inside of view? So you can set it up so that anything that happens in a remote session at all, transfer by default. So
But it is for the commercial point.
right, transfer payment, then
Transcripts.
your actual, log.
So you want to know what's fun? Transcripts, not allowed.
By
Missed compliancy. You cannot do, because if you log it, there is no encryption for passwords you enter or things you enter from the keystrokes, and it logs everything, including credential entry.
But if you, like, even if you do like prompt for credentials, still record the transcript.
I don't think that would.
If you prompt, potentially no.
Okay.
If you're entering at any command level or on the prompt itself,
What if you read a secure string? You would think, since that doesn't actually show it.
correct. As long as what you're, yeah, as long as you're not, right, plain text, right. That should be fine, but as far as I'm just,
Yeah.
we went through, now, we are going through CIS guidelines because NIST actually doesn't have any guidelines. They just tell you ethereal, hey, go do this. So we're using CIS as a benchmark for that. And one of the CIS things actually says, turn off the ability to even start a PowerShell transcript. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. Screw you.
Well, so the transcript command list is different from this.
Yeah, the audit,
So I have to go back.
see if it actually, okay.
It would be weird that required you to not have that. That's one of your easier ways to find out if something's taken.
Yeah, I was like, why would they have that? Didn't make sense.
We were talking about data, I think that kind of maybe one said that you had back, you could specify what parameter sets.
Oh, yeah.
Values of the parameters. Like, you could prevent people from turning their own foot off, like for your help desk folks, right? You create a user, and then like, the normal endpoint probably shouldn't let you create data.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
You shouldn't just be able to do that.
The classic example that I think that is, so you have a user that has a service that runs on RDP access. God, that's awful. Where you can say you can do test remoting, but then they can go ahead and do stop service on, or not, go ahead and stop service.
They can,
Actually do parameterized validation, say you can only do start, stop, and hit service. Those are the only 3 commands you can do, and the only name that you can specify is Brian service. for the user.
Right.
The only thing
That's
that I
pretty
had
cool.
issues with that though, was trying to figure out how, I don't know if I actually might have left before we fully got it figured out. Using types for each of the common verbs. That's the biggest pain to try to figure out how you can enable that without explicitly saying.
Oh, all the normal
Yeah.
commands.
Stuff.
Yeah, that would be, because those you'd have to explicitly.
Right.
Ooh.
All of them. So.
Except for CMD, because then.
Like, so.
Yeah.
Okay, for each object,
Ugh.
all of them, which how many aliases are there?
Right. I wonder if there's they all can belong to a container. They all come from something that you could look at to load definition wise.
So I have a follow-up question. For credit SSP.
Yes.
Are you aware of why people say not to use credit SSP? Or would you like me to tell you why I stopped?
So please tell.
So if you, every node that you authenticate to credit SSP caches those credentials.
Yes.
Kerberos will not. NTLM I think does. But
Yes.
Kerberos does not. So if you're staying within your forest trust,
Yes.
then I also found out something I didn't know is that something that somebody showed me, it was like you can take the credential object that you're passing to it, pass that through as an argument, and then use that credential to continue to authenticate through. Like as long as you pass the object of the credential through, like that's how other people have been getting around it instead of using credit SSP. And like,
Okay.
it took me a little bit of time and effort to retool around that.
Sure.
And not letting it stay cached
On the server.
machine helped out a lot.
And there was.
Does that take advantage of the using namespace? Using colon and then a thing?
I don't think it does.
Does that,
Although, you know, maybe it might.
the only worry that I have with a credential object, PS credential object, and maybe it read. So the fact that you can do credential.get network credential.password and plain text, that's allowed because you're going through the keys that are on the server, right? Because you have the machine key and the user key, I would assume, just like a secure string at that point. It's not actually in plain text sitting there. Because if you try to do secure string and you go back from that and do the .NET and the marshalling object and all that stuff, you have to, it'll only work for that user on that server.
They're both done through
The same
API.
thing. So when you pass that credential to the next environment, does it retool that for that environment? And it knows how to do that if you.
It has worked for me. I don't know that it's how
Okay.
it's reinstating it.
Huh, okay. Because that was always my big thing. It's like, I can't use secure string because it's only on the server I'm on.
Right.
But if PowerShell's smart enough to see that it's a PS credential object and retool it for the next box,
As far as I
That's-
know, it's worked for me.
huh, okay. Well, that'd be something to try.
And I would look at the Kerberos constraint delegation.
Mhm.
It allows you to do the second hop through Kerberos.
Gotcha. Yeah, because that's the biggest thing for us, and why we're doing a lot of this was we don't want to give people access to boxes, and because of that reason, once you give somebody access to PowerShell, they're God mode unless you do those, and we are nowhere near mature enough to manage that yet. But so we've created a whole system.
In fairness, from a safety perspective, though, if I give you admin access to RDP, you have more God. I can't. There's nothing I can really do at all to stop you at that point.
No,
Versus with PowerShell, I can use Gia and I can transcript what you're doing and
Yeah.
just have some sort of
And-
evidence of what happened.
yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah,
that's the argument that I would make is that PowerShell is safer by default than RDP, even if you don't do any of the other stuff around it.
my biggest thing is just the lack of knowledge around. We'll tell certain people to run this command in this certain way, and we'll have it documented, and then that documentation gets transferred by telephone to somebody else instead of by documentation, and something gets mistranslated. And all of a sudden,
Thanks, Ken.
thank you, sir. Have a good night. Drive safe. Any other questions you guys have? No? Any other issues you guys are currently working on that you have questions on, not even relating to this, just in general? PowerShell?
I solved the awful problem, but I'm proud of my awful solution to that problem.
Yeah?
So, I made a migration script from, I'm more of a VMware guy.
Sure.
So we're migrating from eCloud Director to VRA. So, one of the things that we're going to do with both is power on if the VM was powered on before, shut down and remove it. You might do it 50 VMs at a time. So you kind of see there's a problem here. You four and wait, four and wait. How do you go ahead and do it in a more optimized manner? I started looking at invoke parallel, which is kind of a nice wrapper around how you hopefully have to run spaces to it, right? Problem is, PowerShell uses global namespace.
I was gonna ask if you figured this out.
Yes,
Okay.
it is awful. There was one other guy on the entire of the internet trying to do this. And he has code in C#, of which I do not know. So the problem is you can do something, this kind of the thing that we ready to go is there's run spaces, and then there's out of process run spaces, which I had never heard of before.
What?
Evidently, it's a thing.
Wait, out of process.
Out of process run spaces.
Like a whole
But, well, yeah, but that's helpful.
It is. So what I was like is, how do I do this? There's no answer. There's no answer. So I'm like, you know what, screw it. I got the idea, out of process. So what I did was I made, speaking the here string, I didn't realize you didn't have to escape your couple quotes though. So
No.
I can clean up a little bit of my.
Oh yeah, that's the beautiful part of here strings is
Yeah,
anything you put in there is already escaped. It's done.
that's nice. So I made a script block, an outer script block, and then an inner script block.
Mhm.
So my outer script block starts off with a string, in which I pass into it. It's actually an ordered dictionary for the VMs, details about it. Like, okay, bring that in. Then I have an inner script block, which basically says load PowerShell, and then connect to VI server with this name and session ID. And then attempt to power on and do my catch tries and all the other stuff inside of this inner script block. And then I execute PowerShell. And I go ahead and say, start PowerShell and invoke this inner script block. So what happens is, when I take that whole thing and I invoke parallel. So invoke parallel will spin up my default thread max thread. It'll spin up 4 instances of PowerShell.exe. And in every one of them, it'll connect with the already established session, the vCenter. It'll go ahead and find the VM that I specified, power it on, deal with it doesn't power on for a certain amount of time, and everything. So it is super ugly, but I got around the global.
But so are those? So I'd love to know. I don't know if you ran it or tried it. So we had an issue because we use ServiceNow to initiate some things. Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So the issue is that out of the box, ServiceNow will only run a PowerShell script for 5 minutes and then die.
That is very true. Actually, it's 610 seconds is what we have seen.
Well, okay.
That, but yes, anyway.
Yes.
Random time.
Yes. So 600-ish.
Yes.
If you spawn, even as a background job, as a process, as a run space, as anything else, the minute that session dies, so does everything else. I wonder if you're out of process, Will, because it's not tied.
It's true.
Because that is literally a brand new spawn.
It is.
So then that means I can close down the rest and then go.
Everything that I'm seeing.
That
I would
interesting.
think that if you did PowerShell, if you called the PowerShell executable to launch, that would also have the same effect. That'll spawn its own separate process.
Tried. Yep. I tried every darn thing I could think of through, like, short of spinning up a scheduled task that would go run it in 1 minute from now. I had thought about that and I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm not putting that system.
But because we're actually running also.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And this is a problem that we're going to have to solve.
We should talk
Yeah.
because we've solved it.
Have you?
Jenkins.
I don't
we have Jenkins, but we have.
I
we don't
know,
have any built by, I'm talking to this guy.
you don't, what, for Windows?
Yeah.
Do you-
Well, that's for a whole other automated testing initiative I'm running.
So we're spinning up a new Jenkins box just for this. We have a Windows agent, so again, we use Puppet, so we've got a Puppet module for Jenkins Master, we've got a Puppet module for Jenkins Slave, which is actually out on the Forge, because Chris Reese, who is our Puppet guy, wrote it. He put it on the Forge anyway. We use it, you can specify an account that the service runs as, and guess what all the PowerShell sessions run as natively then? That user. So, hey, no password credentials at all. I'm already running as that context. So we basically use Jenkins for a REST-based endpoint. That's all. And all of our stuff, what we're doing now is I'm retooling it, and instead of using a turnstile, a polling, we're gonna make it to where it'll be a ServiceNow allows you to build a REST-based listener. So it'll call out to Jenkins, and then Jenkins at the end, regardless of success or fail, will call back.
So I had a coworker who actually did that, but with PowerShell.
Mhm.
So, what he had done is
Nancy, Flancy?
maybe, like using PowerShell to invoke a web request against
Oh,
ServiceNow.
yeah.
So basically, ServiceNow would trigger and say, wait, and just stop. Don't monitor the process, just
Yep.
tick and then wait until PowerShell finishes, then it would invoke web request
Yep.
back to ServiceNow to say, okay, now you can.
Yeah. And we're gonna do it through Jenkins, just because then, the other thing that I really, really like about Jenkins, as a middleman, is I can build my backend all the way up to Jenkins without ever having to worry about a form or anything else in ServiceNow, and execute it through Jenkins just by passing it a JSON payload. That's what we've done for our parameters, is we've just made it a JSON payload. It can be unique. Guess what? ServiceNow and Jenkins are pretty much dumb. And we just pass the payload, the form becomes a payload, that gets passed, we determine what to go run. So the other nice thing is all console output, even on the remote server, gets logged into Jenkins.
By the way, console output was the only problem I had with invoking parallel and extra PowerShell.
I could see that.
So, but more likely, actually, that's where I use transfers. Generation.
Splunk,
Splunk?
Splunk, HTTP endpoint, go, done. I no longer log anywhere other than Splunk now. My own index into Splunk, just an HTTP endpoint. How about Elk? That's free. Doesn't the Elk stack free? Come on, you do Elk. Same thing.
So we're doing the same thing that you guys are doing with Jenkins.
Mhm.
Call out where the code lives,
Mhm.
GitLab CI, and just have it push over to schedule.
Yeah, we're also looking at, so worldwide, obviously Cisco, right? There's a product called Cisco Cloud Center.
Yeah.
Cloud, yeah, C3, whatever. And it's really cool. There's a lot of good opportunities to use it, including being able to build the form in cloud in C3 really simply and publish it as an app into ServiceNow. So you don't even need a ServiceNow developer. Really cool. They're not, in my opinion, at least, they're not quite there yet for like day two tactical like solutions yet, because they're fixing it, but they still require you to package up your PowerShell code or your scripts in a zip file and store that zip file in GitHub, which doesn't make sense. So anyways, but there's a lot of different solutions. Like I said, we use Jenkins. The way I'm doing it now, I still use Puppet to deploy my stuff, because we use Puppet, use insert, whatever. But now that it's on one server in each domain, it's like, boy, that's only 4 servers I have to manage. Even if it was manual, that's not that horrible. But we still use Puppet.
You looked at running your own repo?
Artifactory.
Okay.
We do it for Chocolatey.
Okay.
But the biggest thing there is we want our PowerShell code as code so that others can utilize it and don't want to have to package it. So I have a PowerShell, so Puppet allows you to do, there's a module called VCS repo. VCS repo allows you to take any Git repo and basically check it out on a machine, clone it. So that's what we're doing on those machines. So that way, the minute somebody changes a PowerShell and we have a dev, a test, and a prod branch, and then each is configured correctly based on Puppet data. And then if somebody checks in a new version of a code in dev, there's no Puppet action needed. It's just a refresh of the client Puppet agent run, and it pulls the new repo down. So it's pretty quick. So it's solving our cases right now using Puppet for that, and then Jenkins is the middleman for the talk. And I can install things that I can monitor. I can put a chat, I can put a bot in between there, you know, and so then I've got a nice middleman that can do a lot of different things with Jenkins. So, and we have expertise with it already. So it's like, I said, why not? I originally started writing my own because I was a developer. I wrote my own .NET client that talked to a RabbitMQ. And then I was going to have ServiceNow submit entries into the queue from ServiceNow. And I was like, well, work. And they're like, yeah, but you're the only .NET developer that we know. So yeah, let's not do that, because if you get hit by a truck. So I said, okay, fine. And I retooled it in Jenkins. But that was like, you know, version 1 or version 0.1 of my system, of the system that we have. So, so anyway, that's basically kind of the idea here of what we've been doing. And
With PowerShell, obviously the beauty of it is you can go anywhere and everywhere quickly.
Yep.
But also talking about now PowerShell for threat
Mhm.
What are you guys seeing? Is there anything you guys are popping up? The world on that, or is it all?
From our security team, not yet that they have made us aware of. Obviously, a lot of the patching of things from, you know, our current status, they're making sure we're patched up to current vulnerabilities, but
Probably.
on our screen share.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna stop the screen sharing now that we're doing the talk.
Can you limit your GPO not being on PowerShell dash